Picture the richest people you can think of. Now picture their bank statements. They owe staggering amounts of money, millions. Some of them, billions. And here's the part nobody says out loud. That's not a mess they're trying to clean up. That is the entire plan. Your whole life you've heard the same story. Debt is bad. Pay it off. Cut up the cards. Sleep easy. And for most people, honestly, that's solid advice. But the wealthy run the exact opposite play. They go out and borrow on purpose, as much as the bank will let them. So either they're all insane, or we got handed the wrong lesson. Spoiler. It's the second one. For most people, debt is the thing that keeps them broke. For a small group, it's the fastest way they ever got rich. Think about the guys right at the top. Musk, Bezos, names like that. A lot of their spending money doesn't come from a paycheck at all. It comes from loans, borrowed against the stock they already own. They barely sell a thing. They barely pay tax, and none of it is some shady loophole. It's just how the game was built. So that's the puzzle I want to crack with you today. One single tool, debt. It buries one person, and it makes the next one filthy rich. How? What does that second person get that the first one doesn't? Because once it clicks for you, I promise, you cannot look at money the same way again. I'm going to take you through the whole thing, piece by piece. The two kinds of debt nobody bothers to separate. Leverage. The billionaire move that's literally nicknamed buy, borrow, die. How inflation quietly works as their debt collector, in their favor, and why the tax code basically hands you a discount just for borrowing. Stick with me to the end, and that scary little four-letter word stops looking like a cage. You'll start seeing it the way they always have. It's a tool, and right now it's sitting in the wrong hands. Yours included. Let's go fix that. First thing we have to get straight, there isn't just one kind of debt. Because school never bothered to explain this. The word debt covers two completely different things that just happen to share a name. And they're not cousins, they're opposites. And the test to tell them apart is stupidly simple. Almost nobody actually runs it. Does this borrowed money pull cash out of your pocket every month? Or does it put cash in? That one question splits the entire world of debt right down the middle. On one side, you've got the stuff that weighs most people down. The credit card sitting at 22%. The loan on a car that's worth less the second you drive it off the lot. Putting a vacation on a payment plan. All of it just quietly bleeds you, month after month. And on the other side is the stuff the wealthy quietly stack up. A mortgage on a place that somebody else pays rent to live in. A loan that grows a business. Money you borrow to buy something that feeds cash back to you and climbs in value while it does it. So follow the pattern here. Regular folks borrow to buy things that die in value. Rich folks borrow to buy things that throw off money. Same loan, same bank, same paperwork. They just point it the other direction, and before they sign anything, they ask one boring little question. Is this going to feed me more than it costs me? If the answer's yes, they'll borrow every dollar they can get their hands on. If it's no, they don't touch it. Doesn't matter how badly they want the thing. And the moment that clicks, that debt is just a tool you get to aim. Money starts looking really different. Which brings us straight to the move that actually makes the rich rich. Lesson 2. And this is the big one. It's all about other people's money. If you boil down why the wealthy love debt this much, it comes down to one word. Leverage. Putting up a little bit of your own cash to control something way, way bigger. Easiest way to feel it is with real estate. So let's say you scrape together $100 grand. Real money. Took you years to save. Watch what happens to that exact same $100 grand two completely different ways. Way 1, you buy a single house, all cash. $100,000. The market goes up 10%. Congrats, you made 10 grand. Way 2, you take that same $100 grand and split it into down payments across 5 houses, worth $500,000 total, and the bank covers the rest. Same 10% bump. Except now you just made $50,000. Same money out of your pocket. 5 times the payday. That gap right there is leverage. The bank put up most of the cash, but the gains on all 5 houses are yours to keep. Your $100,000 basically did the work of $500,000. Now, real talk. This thing has teeth on both ends. Leverage can flatten you just as fast as it lifts you, and we'll get into that, because people skip that part and blow themselves up. But pointed at the right asset, there is nothing else that multiplies your money like it. And here's the part that feels almost unfair. The tenant's rent covers the mortgage, so your debt is getting paid down every single month by somebody else, while you just sit there owning the house and watching it climb. This is the actual blueprint behind basically every real estate fortune you've ever heard of. Not a vault stuffed with cash. Borrowed money paid back by tenants, parked in something that's gone up for 100 years straight. That's why a wealthy person never asks, "Can I afford this out of pocket?" They ask, "How much will the bank lend me so I can control more of it?" Sounds like a tiny change in wording. It's the whole difference between standing still and getting rich. Now for the one that sounds completely illegal. It isn't. This is how the truly rich billionaire rich bankroll an unreal lifestyle and somehow pay almost nothing to the taxman. It's so well known it's got a nickname. Buy, borrow, die. Stay with me because each word is a step. Buy. Step 1. They take their money and pour it into things that grow. Stocks, property, whole companies. Stuff that climbs in value year after year, and that, crucially, they have zero intention of ever selling. Borrow. Step 2. Obviously they need real cash to live on, but they don't sell, because selling means a tax bill with a whole lot of zeros on it. So instead they walk into a bank, point at that giant pile of stock, and say, "Lend against that," and the bank happily hands over the cash. Look at the 2 paths next to each other. Sell 10 million in stock, and you could be cutting the government a check for around 2 million in tax. Or borrow 10 million against that exact same stock, and the tax is 0. You just pay a little interest, often something like 3%. Which one would you pick? And the reason it works sounds almost dumb when you say it out loud. A loan isn't income. The government taxes income. It does not tax money you borrowed. So why on earth would you sell and eat a 7-figure tax hit when the bank will front you the same cash, tax-free, for pocket change and interest? Then comes step 3. And yeah, this one's dark. Die. When they pass away, all those assets go to their kids, and a rule called the step-up in basis quietly kicks in. All those decades of gains that never got taxed, poof. Reset to 0. Gone. Quick example so it's not just abstract. Somebody buys stock for 1 million. Over the years it grows to 20. Normally that's 19 million in gains the taxman has been waiting on. But the second it passes to the heirs, the clock resets to 20 million. The taxable gain? 0. Like the growth never even happened. So sit with the whole thing for a sec. The asset grew for 40 years. It bankrolled a life of jets and mansions through tax-free loans the entire way. And the tax on every bit of that growth just evaporates at the finish line. Buy, borrow, die. Meanwhile, you and me, we get taxed on the money before it even lands in our account. They get to spend money they technically never cashed in. Hey, if you've ever wondered how the rich really stay so far ahead, that right there is most of the answer. This next one is sneaky. Borrowers have a secret ally, and it's inflation. Everyone treats inflation like the villain, and for savers, fair enough, it really is. But for somebody holding the right kind of debt, inflation quietly switches sides and starts working for them instead. Here's the mechanic. You lock in a fixed loan. The number you owe never moves, it's frozen. But every year, inflation chips away at what a dollar is actually worth. So even though the loan says the same thing on paper, the real weight of it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. Say you borrow 300 grand on a fixed mortgage. Fast forward 10 years. 3% inflation a year. The statement still reads 300,000. But in real buying power, you're paying back something closer to 220. Inflation just quietly ate 80 grand of your debt and handed it to you. And while that's happening, everything else floats up. Your paycheck creeps up with inflation. Rents go up. The house itself is worth more. The only thing standing dead still in the whole picture is that mortgage payment, frozen back in time, while the world inflates around it. Now picture the careful one, the person who did everything right, kept it all in cash, no debt, totally safe. Feels responsible, doesn't it? Except inflation is doing the exact reverse to them. It's quietly eating their savings while they sleep. 100 grand in cash, just sitting in an account, loses roughly a quarter of its buying power over 10 years at 3%. You never spent a single cent of it. You got poorer anyway, just for holding still. So inflation robs the guy clutching cash and tips money toward the guy holding smart debt against something real. Same economy, same 10 years, opposite outcome. The rich just made sure they're standing on the right side of it. And every single year it tilts a little toward the borrower and a little against the saver. Sounds tiny, I know. But run that tilt out over 20, 30 years, and it stops being tiny. It's a house, maybe two. Here's the part that's going to annoy you. The tax system is basically rooting for debt. None of this is some happy accident the rich stumbled into. The tax code is written on purpose to reward people who borrow. Learn to read it and the government will literally help you cover your interest. The headline rule is this: borrow for a business or an investment, and the interest you pay usually comes right off your taxable income. The money you hand the bank actually shrinks the money you owe the government. Put numbers on it. Borrow $1 million for your business at 6%. That's 60 grand a year in interest, and you get to deduct every dollar of it. The government is effectively picking up part of the tab on your loan. So a business borrows, writes off the interest, pays less tax. Now go ahead and try to write off your grocery run. Can't do it. But debt that's building wealth? The system pulls up a chair and chips right in. And really chew on how lopsided this is. The person earning interest on their savings has to pay tax on it. The person paying interest on a loan gets to deduct it. Same dollar of interest. The code punishes the saver and rewards the borrower. Real estate cranks this even harder. Stack the deductible interest on top of a thing called depreciation, and you can own a building that is literally putting cash in your pocket every month, while it shows up as a loss on your taxes. Read that one twice. Money coming in the door, and a loss on paper at the very same time, dragging your tax bill down. That's not a glitch in the system, and the only reason the trick exists at all is the debt sitting underneath it. So no, the system isn't broken, however much that stings to hear. It's running exactly the way it was designed to run. It was just designed for the people who understand debt, and quietly against the ones who got taught to be scared of it. This whole thing comes down to one mindset. Forget savings, start thinking assets. Everything we've talked about lands on a single shift in how you think. Rich people are not lying awake dreaming about the day they're finally debt-free. They think about cash flow and assets. Being debt-free isn't even on the wish list. Picture two people. First one, 0 debt, 50 grand in the bank, sleeps like a baby. Second one, 2 million in assets, $1.5 million in debt, pulling in 200 grand a year in cash flow. Gun to your head, which one is actually winning? On paper, number one feels safer. No debt, clean slate. But number two is quietly building an empire with the bank riding shotgun and banking 200 grand a year while doing it. 5 years from now, those two aren't even in the same universe. That's the thing. Net worth was never about getting your debt down to zero. It's about what the debt is buying. Tied to an asset that pays you, debt is an engine. Tied to junk that drains you, it's an anchor. Same chain, completely different job. And honestly, this is the beautiful part. borrow to buy something that pays you, and the bank basically becomes a business partner that never asks for a cut of the profit. They want their interest, and that's it. Everything above that is yours to keep. And the funny thing is, it's the same bank slapping a regular customer with 22% on a credit card. But to the person buying assets, that exact same bank turns into a cheap, quiet engine financing their entire come-up. Same building, two completely different relationships. That's why the wealthy obsess over what borrowed money can earn, instead of being terrified of owing it. The question in their head isn't how do I stay out of debt? It's how hard can I put this borrowed money to work for me? Quick math on why it matters so much. Use only your own cash, and a 10% return is just 10%. But borrow at 4 to control an asset returning 10, and the return on your own money can jump to 20, 30%, even more. Same investment. The leverage did that. But, and this is a big but, here's the trap. That exact same tool building their fortune is the thing quietly wrecking yours. Because most people are holding it completely backwards. So let's talk about how that happens to regular people. Maybe even you. Time to talk about where it all goes wrong for most of us. The reason debt feels evil to so many people is honestly pretty simple. They've only ever met the bad kind. And to be fair, the bad kind really is a trap. One that squeezes tighter the longer you sit in it. Look at what the average debt load actually looks like. Credit cards at 22%, a car note, buy now, pay later splitting up a pair of sneakers. Almost all of it spent on stuff that's worth less the moment it's yours. And there's the whole mistake in one line. Borrowing to consume instead of borrowing to own. One pays for a lifestyle that's gone by next month. The other builds something that's still standing in 20 years. In the moment, they feel identical. They could not be more different. Take a 40 grand car loan. The thing loses half its value in about 5 years, and the whole time you're paying interest on the full sticker price. So you're losing on the car and losing on the loan. That's leverage running in reverse, working you over from both ends at once. That's bad debt in a nutshell. Paying a high rate to own something that's worth less every sunrise. People forget that leverage doesn't only multiply the wins. Aim it the wrong way and it multiplies the losses just as hard, just as fast, and it almost always shows up dressed as a nicer life. The upgraded car, the new phone on installments, the apartment that's a little out of reach. Feels like you're winning, like you finally made it. It's really just a pile of little anchors, each one tugging you down a bit further. And zoom all the way out, the number is wild. Americans are carrying north of $17 trillion in household debt. And a giant slice of that is exactly this, the wasting kind. Trillions borrowed to buy stuff that's already on its way to worthless. So most people grab the rich man's tool and use it perfectly backwards. They leverage themselves into things that drain them dry, get burned to a crisp, and walk away swearing that debt is the enemy. But the tool was never the villain. It was always just how they were holding it. And it always comes back to this one line. So tattoo it somewhere. Bad debt makes the bank rich off you. Good debt makes you rich off the bank. The only thing standing between them is one question. Does it pay you or do you pay for it? Okay, enough theory. Here's how you actually use debt the way they do. So how do you flip this in your own life, starting from wherever you're at right now? Good news. You do not need to be a billionaire for any of it. The exact same rules shrink right down to a normal paycheck. Here's the playbook. Move 1. Kill the bad debt first. No exceptions. Before you get fancy with anything else, go after every high-interest consumer debt you've got, with credit cards at the very front of the line. At 22%, that's leverage actively beating you up every month you let it sit there. And look, there is no investment on the entire planet that reliably beats wiping out a 22% card. None. Knocking out that balance is a guaranteed tax-free return. For most people, it's flat out the smartest money move they've got available. Full stop. Move 2. From here on out, You only borrow for stuff that grows or pays you. Something that goes up in value, a business, even a skill that bumps your income. Simple gut check. If the borrowed money can't earn its keep, it's not an investment, it's a leak. Run every loan through 3 quick questions. Does it go up in value or pay me cash? Is the interest rate lower than what the thing actually returns? If it's yes to both, congratulations, that's good debt. Anything else, you walk away. Move 3, respect the downside, because leverage bites. It multiplies losses every bit as fast as it multiplies gains. The rich borrow aggressively, sure, but they almost never bet the whole farm. They always keep cash on the side for when it hits the fan. And trust me, eventually it hits the fan. Over-leverage is the exact reason people who looked loaded on paper get wiped out the second the market turns on them. The goal was never to pile on as much debt as humanly possible. It's smart debt, with a cushion underneath it so one bad year doesn't end you. Move 4. Let inflation and the tax code do the heavy lifting for you. When you do take on the good kind of debt, lean toward long fixed-rate loans on solid assets. That's the sweet spot where time, inflation, and taxes all quietly start pushing on your side of the table. Picture the toned-down, normal person version of the billionaire playbook. A little smart leverage on one asset that climbs in value, held for 30 years, with the rent or the returns covering the loan the entire way. That one move, all by itself, can turn an ordinary income into real, actual wealth. Because the goal was never to be terrified of debt, and it was never to drown in it either. It's to graduate, to go from being the person sweating the interest payment every single month to the person whose assets quietly cover it for them. And you start small. One good debt asset that pays its own loan and kicks you a little extra on top. Then you go do it again. That's not some hack, and it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. That is, almost word for word, how every fortune you've ever been jealous of got built. Debt was never the enemy. Not knowing the difference, that's the enemy. And as of right now, you know exactly what the wealthy have always known. So go pick the thing back up, and this time, point it the right way.